Okay, we are now on Excel Unit A Video 2, which is going to be over the information starting on page Excel 6, which is understanding formulas. Because Excel is truly powerful program because users at every level of mathematical expertise can make calculations with accuracy. To do so, you must use formulas. And formulas are equations in a worksheet. And you use the formulas to make the calculations as simple as adding a column of numbers or as complex as profit and loss projections for a global corporation. Of course, to tap into the power of Excel, you should really understand how formulas work. So first of all, let's take a look at step 1, and it tells us to click on cell E5. And we took a look at this one just a little bit ago. And of course, this active cell contains a formula, which appears on the formula bar. Now, this is very important for you to understand that all Excel formulas begin with an equal sign. The equal sign tells Excel that you are ready to do a calculation. Without that equal sign, Excel does not know that you want those two numbers to be multiplied. It just sees it as text. Now, if you wanted a cell to show the results of adding 4 plus 2, the formula in the cell would look very similar like this. So if I go over to the side over here, let's say K5, the cell to add, or the formula to add 4 plus 2 would be equals 4 plus 2. And if I would hit my enter key, notice it gives me the answer of 6. And if we take a look back in the formula bar, once this is the active cell, we'll see that there's the formula that we have used. And that's why it's important to understand these formulas. Of course, also it tells us on here if you wanted a cell to show the result of multiplying two values, for an example. And that is what we're actually taking a look at on here. Of course, to delete out information in the cell, you can just highlight the active cell and click on delete. But if we're going back over here to E5, we're wanting to multiply the information that is in B5, which we see here is 40, and D5, which is 15. So if we take 40 times 15, that's going to give us the answer of 600. Now, you want to make sure that you use what we call these cell references. We could have easily typed in, and I'll do this over here, we could have easily typed in 40 times 15, and notice that would give us 600. However, remember, as we were mentioning in the last video, that Excel will automatically update your information as you type into it. Now, when I put it in like this, I would actually have to go back up here and change these numbers here if I wanted to change where this says 600. However, I'm going to delete that. If we go over here, as long as we use the cell references of B5 times D5, whatever is in B5, it's going to multiply by whatever is in D5. For an example, if I change this 15 to 16, watch this cell right here, watch the 600. Notice it increased. I did not have to do anything else except for to change that information. If I want to change it back, I'm just going to type in 15, and notice it goes back there. So that is the very powerful tool of Excel's, because once you set up this formula, then you can constantly make changes to these numbers and it will automatically make the adjustments and recalculate for you. Now let's click on cell F5. So we're going to go down, or across to the next cell over there, and you'll notice that we have another type of formula in here. And it says, while you're entering a formula in a cell, the cell references and arithmetic operators appear on the formula bar. When you're finished entering the formula, you can either click the enter button on the formula bar, which if we're inside here, looks like this check mark. That's our enter. Or you can actually hit your enter key on your keyboard as well. Of course, this is actually an example of a more complex formula on there, and this is what's calculating up overtime pay. So if we take C5, which is our overtime hours, and we're going to multiply this by the product here of 2 times D5, which would be 15. So ultimately, we're taking 30, which is 15 times 2, and we're multiplying it by 4 hours, and that gives us 120. So this is the formula for overtime pay on there. And this is where we're saying that we're earning 2 times our hourly rate, or what we call double time. Now, when you're creating these calculations in Excel, it's important to, first of all, to understand where your formula should be at. Now, notice that this one has already added in titles for you, and you need to know which one of those titles should contain formulas. For example, this gross pay. We have nothing there right now, but we know that there should be some formulas in there. And Excel formulas are created in the cell where they're going to be viewed at. And this means that the formula containing the gross pay, which we took a look at here, is now going to be entered in cell G5. So if we're going to have it for Peter here, his gross pay should be here in G5. Next, you need to know exactly what cells and arithmetic operators are needed. Don't guess. If you have to work it out on paper first to take a look at, do you have to add, multiply, subtract, divide? Is it to a certain power of something? And those are some things that you need to know. So don't guess. Make sure you know exactly what information needs to go in those cells before you create the formula. Then you also need to make sure that you create the formulas with care. You need to make sure that you know exactly what you want a formula to accomplish before it's created. Because if you create an inaccurate formula, they may have some completely different effects if the formula or its results are referenced by other formulas. So remember to make sure that all of your formulas are accurate and that you create those with care. You also need to make sure that you use the cell references, and we talked about that. Because if I replace this here as we did over here, let's assume that I'm just going to have I5 be 40 and I have J5 be 15. And if I would go through here and say equals 40 times 15, 40 times 15, now you'll notice that we have the same answer of 600. However, if I change this 40 to 42, notice that this doesn't change at all. However, if I use the cell references instead, so if I delete this 40 and just click on the cell here of I5 and I delete the 15 and make it J5, now I can change the numbers all I want to, and it will automatically recalculate. Of course, finally, you want to make sure that you determine what calculations will be needed, because sometimes it's difficult to predict what data will be needed within a worksheet. But you should try to anticipate what statistical information may be required. For an example, if there are columns of numbers, chances are good that both columns and rows totals should be probably present. And of course, if you take a look on page Excel 7, it shows you the mathematical operators, or some of the mathematical operators that you can actually use in Excel. So you would use your plus sign for addition. You would use the dash, which is the subtraction or a negative number on there. If you have the little asterisk, which is if you hit Shift 8, or if you're using your keypad, the little star key, that's for multiplication. A forward-leaning slash, that's for division. Of course, you would hit the percent symbol, which is Shift 5. That would be for your percent. And then you would use the caret on there, which is Shift and 6, for an exponent on there as well. And that concludes video 2. We'll be taking a look on page Excel 8, where we're going to be entering some labels and values and using our auto sum in video 3.